Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's World Championship 2009 Stars Accelerator was a game that was pretty big in my middle school days, and that all came from the anime itself, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's.
God, I can just remember the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Everyone's reaction was exactly the same, just like this.
Let's say you had your motorcycle, Mr. Kappa, and for the sake of argument, imagine we were both dueling while riding said motorcycle. How would you describe that situation?
I don't know. Card games on motorcycles.
Card games on motorcycles? What the?
I cannot just state how much I love this anime and why it's one of my favorite shows ever made. Being a fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, I would consume every piece of media that was related to it, if I could afford to. Anime, manga, building my own Synchron Warrior deck, and even playing the games, which is how we got here to Stars Accelerator. Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's World Championship 2009 Stars Accelerator is the first World Championship game to feature the 5D series, though Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Tag Force 3 will be the first game to introduce the Synchro Summoning mechanic in game form, as 5Ds was already out in Japan around that time. Now, Stars Accelerator is the sixth Yu-Gi-Oh! Game on the Nintendo DS, and it came out in Japan on March 26, 2009, and got a North American release just a month later on April 30th, 2009. The World Championship game started all the way back in 2004 when the first game, aptly named Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship 2004, came out on the Game Boy Advance. The game in this series are special as each game has been hosted at the actual in real life World Championship tournaments since the first game and all the way to the final game, Over the Nexus, which dropped in 2011. But only in this video I will be covering Stars Accelerator. Stars Accelerator is the first World Championship game that features an actual story mode for once, as the other games were simply, as I said before, games to be used in the actual World Championship tournaments. The story mode of Stars Accelerator covers the events of 5D's first arc, the Fortune Cup, all the way to its end with Jack Atlas as the final boss of the game. You take the role of your own custom character who is woken up in the middle of Satellite without any memories. Over the course of the game, you essentially take the role of what Yusei did in the anime, though technically the game treats it as Yusei doing some of the events first and you copying what he did. For example, you escape sector security when Rally is found out to have stolen a Dual Runner chip, you escape the garbage pipeline to New Domino after he does, you get caught and get sent to the facility before he does, you break into a building for your runner and deck bag, which also has you meet up with Yusei, who was also there at the exact same time. Fight all the same duels he did with some changes, like how Yusei never meets Leo or Luna, or even Akiza for that matter in this game, but you do instead. You play the events of the Fortune Cup out from beginning to end, just like in the anime with some obvious deviations to make the game your experience. Though the actual campaign isn't anything special and every character is very basic due to the plot and the point of 5Ds they chose to adapt for this game. Stars Accelerator is also the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Game on a Nintendo handheld to feature a 3D overworld, which takes place not only in Satellite but in New Domino as well, though the New Domino section is somewhat limited compared to the Satellite since this game takes place in the first season of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Here you can fight random duels who roam the map, and this game has a very limited amount of NPC variety, and by that I mean appearance-wise, not actual deck variety. Many of them are just the same color swaps appearance-wise, which many games in the 5Ds era did a lot. Hell, there are duelists that look exactly the same with the same colors, just a room apart from each other. You can go to a shop and purchase cards, but also talk to a fortune teller, and if you're lost in the game, they can guide you back to the story mode path for a fee. You can also engage in turbo duels as well.
Wait, what?
Yes, along with your average grounded duels, Stardust Accelerator manages to infuse turbo duels in a way that's only been done by the 5D's World Championship Trilogy. The only other game that tried to make the turbo duels work was Wheelie Breakers, but that's a different beast entirely, and this is not a Wheelie Breakers episode. The turbo duels work the same as the anime rules. Each turn you gain a speed counter which you can use on speed spells, since the field is dominated by the Speed World Field spell. For every 1,000 points of damage you take, you lose 1 speed counter. You also gain a special menu that can only be used for turbo duels, and on top of that, there are exclusive cards made specifically for turbo duels that you can use, such as the fan favorite speed spell Angel Baton or the card speed spell Slipstream. Slipstream being one of the various speed spell cards that directly affect the speed counters. You can create a new specific deck only for turbo duels, or you can copy your main grounded deck. Doing so will take away all the spell cards you have, which will replace them with speed spell cards at your choice. Honestly, I love how they implemented turbo duels in this game. It's nice to see how much they're willing to put into this for their very first 5D's game. As you can duel on the road, you can also create and customize your own duel runner using the various frames, CPU, shields, chips, etc. provided to you. Not only are you using your cash on cards, but you also need a good enough runner. Now, your duel runner doesn't matter in actual turbo duels in regards of its body and frame and whatnot. Their purpose is for the races you'll have at times. Yes, Stardust Accelerator is a partial racing game, and you'll have to have a damn good runner that controls well enough to outpace your opponent, as well as avoid hazards on the road. Now, the runner racing mechanic isn't exactly the best, but it isn't the worst thing either. I still like it. If you think you're not good enough yet, you also have the option to drive in simulators at various runner shops to test out how well the vehicle controls. You can also unlock the runners of Yusei and Jack after dueling them an assload of times, but since I wanted to do a playthrough using Yusei's runner, I used an actual replay. You can fight me if you want to. Now keep in mind this is only in the story mode. You also have a secondary mode known as World Championship. In this mode you have a lot of duelists you can duel, from characters you have transferred over from the story to actual monsters. As a matter of fact, the monsters take out the roster in this mode, so you can throw down with monsters such as Karibo or even the legendary Blue Eyes White Dragon. The cool thing about these monsters is that they have decks based around utilizing them, which is exactly new for Yu-Gi-Oh games, but it's cool to see how huge this roster is as of now. If that wasn't enough, you can also perform tag duels. Now, you can do tag duels in the story mode, and it's pretty much the same ruling. You have a partner, you take a turn, your opponent takes a turn, your partner takes a turn, your opponent's partner takes a turn, and it loops back to you, and so on and so forth. Hell, you even have spectator duels where you can just watch the AI play out matches. Not exactly a feature I care for, but I guess it makes you feel part of the World Championship as an audience member. Now, before I continue on with this retrospective, I actually have to talk about my favorite parts of all these 5D's World Championship games. The music. And I'm sorry for shilling here, but the 5D's World Championship games is the best soundtrack in any Yu-Gi-Oh game ever. The only ones that come close to me are Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Spirit Caller, which have the same composers to my knowledge, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Tag Force 6. Now, the 5D's World Championship Trilogy soundtrack was composed by Tomoaki Hirono, Norikazu Miura, and Miki Mirai, each of them bringing their A game, and they only get better each game, and I cannot state how just amazing the OST for all these games are. For every duel, for every story mode theme, for every overworld theme, it's just so amazing. Now, out of the trilogy, Stardust Accelerator has my least favorite, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It actually has one of the best OSTs on the Nintendo DS or any Yu-Gi-Oh game in general.
ソフトスターダストアクセラレーターで君も世界の頂点を目指せ。ストーリーモードで対戦テクニックを磨きワールドチャンピオンシップに挑戦しよう。遊戯王 5D's スターダストアクセラレーター特典カード3枚同梱で3月26日発売。ウィーリーブレイカーズも同時発売。
Now, while I really do love this game and it's brought me a lot of joy in my childhood, it damn sure ain't perfect. As with many Yu-Gi-Oh games, your starter deck is very bad. Now, they do plot characters with terrible decks such as Yusei's friends so you can grind them out and get better cards from the shop, but the moment you venture out just the furthest bit from Yusei's hideout, you get duelists with really good cards like Mirror Force and Torrential Tribute, cards you definitely won't have access to yet. Another problem that all of the World Championship games, especially in the 5D's era, suffer from is the grinding. You get so little DP, aka your currency at the end of duels, that it becomes laughable. Now you have a rank you get while winning enough duels, and your actions play a huge part of how you get DP, such as summoning a specific monster, using a specific summoning mechanic, using a lot of spells, using a lot of traps, that kind of stuff, or hell, even winning duels in a limited amount of turns, hell. But you get so little that it becomes a drain at times, and it becomes a huge grind fest. The actual campaign, like I played the entire campaign with just a really good deck, and I blitzed through most of the story mode stuff. The campaign is about 5 to 6 hours long, right? Very short, but with your shit deck and the grinding you're gonna have to do, it's probably gonna be like 20 to 30 hours depending on your skill level. And that's a little, yeah, you go from 5 to 20 hours, that's a massive jump. Another huge problem with this game is when you're forced to do puzzles or certain mini games to progress, which is aggravating. Which I wouldn't mind, but the mini games and the puzzles suck in the World Championship games. Now, after being arrested and put into the facility, you are stripped of both your deck and duel runner. Now, once you're set free, you must break into the impound in order to get both of them back. And you're forced into these stealth sections, which are somewhat broken. Sometimes you can breeze on by without the guards seeing you, and other times you think you're hiding well, but no, they spot you anyway, which forces you back to the entrance. And keep in mind, you have to dodge the guards 4 different times, each with their own annoying patterns. You also have to grab 2 separate key cards here. One for your deck and one for your duel runner. After you grab the key card for your runner, you then put on a timer to snag it before you're found. This one is even worse because not only you're on a time limit, but it forces you to start the timer again so you can go back to the room you grabbed the card from for the first time, dodging guards all the while, and you get to go back and rush for your runner. Now, another con I have is a very specific duel. It's really hard to talk about, but it's a very specific duel, which is infamous among folks who've played this game and got to the end of it. Now, not much of a spoiler here since the story really doesn't matter, but it turns out your player character is an artificially created signer, and you get small flashbacks occasionally about things in your past. Near the end of the game, you have to duel all of your clones, known as Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta, in a 4-duel style match, kind of like the Pokemon Elite Four style. You lose one duel, you have to start from the very beginning. And on top of that, you have to keep the same amount of life points from the last duel if you won one, so you can't heal in between. They also have some of the best decks in the game. Alpha uses a Zombie World deck, Beta uses an Ice Barrier deck, which isn't admittedly too good, but the Synchro monsters of Ice Barriers are pretty good. And Gamma uses a Light Sworn deck, and finally Delta uses a Dark deck focused around Dark Armed Dragon and Snipe Hunter. Now, getting past Alpha and Beta aren't the hardest, but you'll be struggling against Gamma and Delta if you aren't ready. And again, you lose the whole thing if one of them beats you. And the funny thing I find all about this is that this is Rex Goodwin's big master plan, to use false signers to awaken the Crimson Dragon. And literally after you beat the 4 of them, you're plucked back into the Fortune Cup Stadium just to fight Jekyll, the final boss. And after giving Yusei the Stardust Dragon, the game just ends, which is funny to me. Like, yeah, we went through all that. Clone duels, it's over. We just fight Jack and call it a day. It's just done. Oh my god, this game, ugh. But you know what, despite my frustrations, it is nice to replay this game again and remember why I had so many fond memories of it in the first place. I never really check review scores for Yu-Gi-Oh games, as every Yu-Gi-Oh game has a very specific amount of appeal. Not everyone's going to get into the series, and as such, various entries of the series have been mixed among people, especially those who aren't invested into the actual card game. Stardust Accelerator is not a perfect game. It is definitely not, but what it packs into that little DS cartridges is amazing. A lot of content from duels, card collecting, turbo duels, character customized. You can even customize your own dialogue during duels, duel runner customization, the entire World Championship mode, the Blaze through, and you have a lot to do, and I love it. And I'm happy that I've managed to play this game again to learn why I love it. The World Championship games, it's sad that they ended off in 2011. I really wish they could have kept going more throughout the era of the 3DS, because definitely Yu-Gi-Oh! Definitely needed some World Championship games on the 3DS, because first of all, the 3DS had like one Yu-Gi-Oh! Game and it was really bad. So yeah, I really love Stardust Accelerator, and I'm happy to have played the World Championship games in the first place.